I want to invite Drs. Frederick and Leonard to join us up on the stage. We've already introduced those two. And then I'm going to introduce Jeremy Howard, who's going to join us on the panel. Jeremy's with Smithfield Premium Genetics. I'll let him talk a little bit more when we come up. Don't be shy. We'll come up on stage for it. It's going to be a little tight, but we'll try to make some room. And then our final guest for the panel is going to be BJ Brugman. BJ is the CEO of Distynct out of Iowa. I'm sure we'll get a little bit more on that as we go through too. And I think BJ, your company is probably one of those 358 startups that has formed within the last 5 years. So we will go through this. If you have any questions, please, just let us know. We're going to have a microphone in the crowd going around. And so if you have a question, it can be for any one speaker, it can be for all of them, but this is our chance, I think, right now to be innovative. Okay, ask some questions, ask those big questions that have been on your mind all day, and get some advice from the experts. So, but the first question I will ask, I'll start us off and just say, the last 2 hours here, we've gone through a lot of technology ideas, technologies that are available, might become available. And in your opinion, what's the biggest hurdle for the swine industry to adopt these technologies today? BJ, you want to start? If you want to give a little introduction, that's fine too.
I have an idea.
Yeah. If you want to stand this.
Hi everyone, my name is BJ Brugman. As John mentioned, CEO and founder of Distynct. So we enable real-time data collection from livestock facilities. And to do that, we provide network connectivity to any livestock facility in any area, and then enable remote monitoring of that facility using completely hardware agnostic devices. So the limiting factor, I think, having kind of been through this evolution of precision technology for a couple of years, the limiting factor to me is quite obvious, and that is connectivity. And so the evolution of our business, we started with some camera technology, thinking that the coolest thing would be to identify and count pigs. And we thought that was the sexiest thing in the world. Took that out to some potential customers and friends, and got quickly stopped in our tracks because nobody has internet on finishing farms. And so we're like, wow, this is sweet. So called some local telephone companies and said, hey, could you guys help us get internet to these facilities? And they priced that like they didn't want to do it. And they don't want to do it. And so we said, okay, actually the business is here, probably in terms of establishing a foundation for precision livestock farming first. And it's easy to think about the sexy things that the future might hold. And we fell victim to that ourselves. But just to answer it succinctly, I think the limiting factor is connectivity. And that's what we're working to address because 90 to 95% of these farms don't have access to reliable connectivity.
Anyone else? Brent?
Yeah, maybe I think that's great. And I'd add there the value proposition from my standpoint is you got to create a value, and then the cost has to come in line for it to be a good return on investment, including maintenance and those types of things. Definitely connectivity is a portion of that too. So maybe John, I'll ask a question for you. As you go in and you had some great data that says the individuals that are doing it today, you had a wide array of someone or an example that was very good and one that was not very good at all. When you go in and talk to individuals, what are they comparing, or what do they want to compare success to? Are they comparing it to the person that does the best at marketing, the average of marketing, or kind of that bottom tier?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as we talk to some of those, right, it's that's when these ideas of where to use the camera started to become different. But I would say, most of them are still, success is getting them in their box, right? Everybody knows, but whatever that weight range is, it's getting as many pigs into that as possible, and then setting up the next group of pigs to also be accurate, right? So they're after accuracy, but every farm has a little bit more, or more give, I would say, and what's accurate, right? So 20 pounds, maybe we got to be there. 10 pounds is really, really good. And so, but they're comparing that to, I honestly don't know what they're comparing it to. If anyone wants to grab that one on where they see the value in that one. But for us, it was, can we get as many pigs, identified as market weight in this group as possible? That was accurate.
Maybe I didn't ask the question, maybe how I should have, whether we're talking about pig weight or estrus detection, or things along that one. I think individuals that grew up with in the system know it well, great herds person, can read a pig better than they can read themselves. As we get individuals that are new to agriculture or not, that are more tech savvy, really what is the measurement of success, I think, is important. Are we trying to meet or exceed the top 25% of individuals or persons out there, or the average, and where is that? So for me, I was curious of what others are seeing out there as what measure that success.
Yeah. Well, there's some people in the crowd that might be able to take that one. What is success?
I may have an answer. The success would probably be associated with when you were growing up and you were a very good person. What did you pay for TV watching? What did you? What? What did you pay when you watched TV when you were growing up? Zero.
We paid zero, but then okay, we got a satellite dish. I guess we were.
What you pay that?
I hate to add it up.
That's basically where we are.
Okay.
That's cost prohibitive. That's all I can see.
Yeah.
Society gets through that era of blindness, and they will jump on board.
Yeah, and I guess I guess my question was, if we take cost out of the equation, which is important, absolutely important, it is we look at whether it's estrus detection or body weight, we're asking a technology to do something for us. Do we want it to be as good as we are, or the next individual to come in? So
We lost that one. There we go.
hello?
Oh.
So I 100% agree with the cost. So, but even just the measure of success,
We're losing all.
If you've got 100 people doing something in a system, are we trying to achieve the top 25%, the top 10%, or someone that's being trained, or that type of thing? So that's where I was. Even if it was $1 a barn, right? So, or if it was equal to what you can pay for an individual to go out and do that manual task, even if it was equal, what's the success rate?
I'm going to try again.
Okay. Any other questions from the crowd, or else I have another one, and maybe I'll start with Jeremy on this one. So Suzanne got this one in her talk, but what's that next big thing? And so maybe related to what you're doing, and that's where I'll let Jeremy, if you want to give a quick introduction and answer that one for us.
I'll stand up since I made the first table of PNC, but I'm Jeremy Howard, and I'm
trained as a geneticist, and as of recently, I turned into more of the role is called director of analytics, but you can just think of it being trying to bring together data and what financial impact does that have in terms of economic modeling and understanding those relationships and what impacts what. And so I guess I'll still stand, but I guess to answer his question, I think a lot of it is, so you can use technology now, you can bring it in, and then when you start to scale it, it's really, how do you scale it with all of this information? Where before, maybe you were just using a single data point for something and tracking ahead and say, this is what I predict this lot to be. But if you're only using a single data point, you have to think about, well, you have to retrain these models and you have to improve these models over time. And I would probably say the majority of people don't think in terms of retraining or figuring out what is the best model or improving these models over time. And so start there, and then that way you'll figure out, well, on average, we're doing this. And I would argue probably what these technologies will help you out with is reducing the variation, and kind of you get to the lots that you say, what happened here? Maybe you understand it more instead of maybe say, I don't know.
Anybody else on the next? What are you eyeballing?
I think like it's fun to go to conferences and think about, like, we see the images on the screen and talk about all that's possible, and maybe look at what other industries have applied. To me, I think reflecting back at the industry is like, what are the really simple things that we just don't do quite well? I think like next big thing is really fun to like talk about autonomous tractors and things like that's awesome. It's fun to talk about those things, and fun to talk about autonomy in livestock production as well. But I think kind of goes to your point, Jeremy, is like, there's some really simple things that if we had the information, maybe a little faster even, allows us to do something today that is quite revolutionary, and we're able to do it because we know it right now versus knowing it in 6 months. I forget this presentation that was in, I think it might have been in yours, where we get the data in swine production 6 months later, 9 months later, after those animals have been harvested. So like, I don't know that it's as pie in the sky, like go to the moon type technology, like facial recognition technology on the door. Like, okay, is that the next thing, or do we just want a sensor on the door that tells us if it opened and someone was there? So I think thinking practical while staying, we have to be visionary, but also reflect back and say, well, what are the really easy ones that we could probably just do better?
Yeah.
So I teach a class on precision livestock technologies, and I tell all my kids that if there's things that we need to automate, or what's easy to automate, cheap, a boring job, and happens a lot. So if it's something that's high frequency, simple, and your worker really doesn't enjoy doing it, then that's going to be a great opportunity to start bringing in these technologies. And if it's a simple process and we can do in a simple PLS solution, then that's going to be more likely to be reliable, low maintenance, and get more easily and readily adopted too. And so I think that's another big advantage for getting these PLS solutions to actually become implemented in our systems. And then of course, making sure that there's something that the producers and caretakers actually want to be automated and give up.
Yeah, producers have to want it. Okay, questions from the crowd. There you go, Brian.
Yeah, question, Suzanne, following up on that, how do you get people's farms engaged in to train them, and what all five of them see them in next 5 years? If we get the connectivity right, the data they can use to help make decisions quicker. And look at your crystal ball, what we need to do for training, we can get data from them. That makes sense.
Okay, so the question was, what do we need to do to help engage that producer or help them realize how to use their data, right? Start.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you have to start with showing the value of how this is actually going to help you, and then be realistic about the time and money and effort upfront that's gonna take to get them up and going. And then by and large, I think for the producers that I talk to, the technologies that end up staying in the barn versus getting ripped out is the continued technical support of the company. And so making sure that as an industry, if you're gonna put the product out there, that you have available spare parts and, you know, useful technicians that can be there and are gonna work with you without talking down to you. I think those are all really, really important for making sure that these actually stay in the barn and are used properly.
Yeah, and I would second that, where it's mostly the constant innovation of it. Because I think we've all seen something where we put something in the barn, it worked for a few months, and then we would like to do little tweaks, right? And it's just like, maybe it won't fit in this time frame, and it kind of gets pushed back. Then you'll see something, you know, around for let's say like 3 or 4 years, but everyone doesn't like it. And so then it becomes not obsolete, but it's something you have to do. And so I think there has to be this constant innovation and not just put it out there and then kind of let it hang out. Just there has to be constant innovation, and I kind of practice the little tweaks maybe instead of the complete overhauls.
I think it goes back a little bit to some of the things that were set up here, and going back to the point of raising pigs is about feed, air, water, and pig care. And I think it can be that simple. If we have easy, relatively inexpensive sensors or way to monitor those. So ventilation is already there, feed is coming, weight, and somehow care, whether it's activity or some portion of that. For me, for maybe a larger system, it's where's my opportunity today? Where do I need to spend my time first, second, third, prioritize? I won't call it a alert or alarm, because those may become too frequent, or that it's more of where's the priority today, and a smart action list is probably the most important thing that I think we can do right away. It's not the next best thing, but relative to connectivity, I think it's that. And then modifying the plan, or having this is happening in this barn, what's my action and who's going to do it, and intervene so that we can improve. That's simple and straightforward for me. So that's easier said than done.
There's another one up here.
On the RFI, the big here, is that just for ear tag number of that, correct?
Okay, so the question is just a little bit more on the RFID tags and what it can do.
So the RFID tag itself, like physically in the ear, only stores a number, but then that number is linked to a database. And so in that database, you put in, you know, the lineage, parity information, genetic information, weight, vaccination schedules, whatever you want to collect on that animal. And so it's just an easier, faster way to identify which the pigs are, rather than having to write down the number in the barn, walk back to your computer, and then look it up.
My question will be, how many people here wear Fitbit or similar to that, monitors everything about you right now? Is that useful?
So it's not with the straight RFID tag. So in order to get that additional like behavior activity information, you need to have a little bit more of a complex sensor. And so we have those, and they do have them in ear tag forms, or they even have waistbands or around the heart girth that you can put on these animals. But the downside of those are you then have to retrieve them, and they're usually a little larger to try and get back, or you have a very limited battery life. And so you can put an accelerometer, your Fitbit technology, into an ear tag on a pig. And it's been shown very reliably to gather activity, posture, even some aggressive behaviors can be really readily accessed and parsed out from those, but you're limited by your battery life to only be, depending on how frequently you want data. Longest ones I've seen to get high resolution data are about 30 days on battery life. So
if you were looking for just specifically big weights at market, they would be turned on at that time. Last 30 days.
Oh, sorry, maybe I should explain. The RFID tags would just identify who the pigs are. It wouldn't provide you any kind of weight data.
Right.
If you wanted to, you could tie it in potentially with one of your weight estimation cameras. Right now, the weight estimation cameras just measure each pig in the herd, but they don't know which pig is which.
Correct.
And the data they give you is just an average pig weight. And so that could be a potential way to tie individual pig data to the cameras, but then you have to have some way to sync them up. And I don't know of anyone right now who's doing that commercially.
They weren't doing this commercially. Our suggestion.
I have seen one solar powered ear tag now. So
Oh
they've
yeah, they
got-
have them a lot in the beef.
So the battery in the RFID is charged by solar power, so that it is constant recharging. Oh no, we don't get a lot of sun in the pig barn though. Other questions? Yep, right here.
Has there been any work done with infrared cameras as far as monitoring body temperature or fever in a population?
Okay, the question is using infrared cameras to monitor fevers or temperature changes in the barn. And any of you worked with it? Yeah.
So it can be done. The problem with infrared cameras is that you have to go really pricey in order to capture those small temperature fluctuations. And so as far as using IR to identify body temp, they found that it's much more reliable to look at ear temperature or right at the base of the ear. Those are your best areas of surface temperature correlation to body temp. And so they have used those to measure thermal comfort, because just like us in a chilly room today, your fingers are what gets coldest first, right? And just like on that, pig's ends of their ears are what gets coldest first. So they can actually see some of the capillary action of the expanding and contracting using the IR cameras. But as far as identifying fevers automatically, you have to have a pretty expensive camera and then a fairly complex software system in order to take that whole pig image, pick out just a little area behind the base of the ear, and then correlate it. And it can be done, just very expensive at this point in time.
Do you have anything to add on?
Again, would that work with the tag?
There's potential, yeah. We're thinking about it, I promise.
Where I've seen the infrared used more instead of pig temperatures, barn temperatures, and inside out looking for drafts. That I think is fairly common with some of the flare cameras, handheld device. Okay, there's another question, I think. No? Okay, sure.
I've seen some work in Europe looking at post-slaughter tech, looking for because of pathology, type of camera situation. But do you know any more about that? Like, is there anything in the US or America that's looking at this kind of post-slaughter?
Post-slaughter herd checks. You got it. Suzanne's got it.
Well, I teach a class on this, so I'm pretty well versed in overall. So in the US, we are using imaging technologies to grade at least beef, just to determine like grade A and so forth. I know that that's a big, pretty widely used in packing plants acceptable. I'm not sure about specific to the swine industry, if we have any to evaluate marbling and so forth. I know that there's some work going on the live animal side too, to look at some of the meat quality things, like using ultrasound images and so forth.
There's a large sheep processing plant in California doing it also, measuring carcass characteristics and then tracking that back to genetics. So I think we're going that direction. To me, predicting live weight is important, but predicting carcass yield would be even better, right, as we get those images. Other questions? Yep.
So potential in the very near future is to have an associated set of barns very similar to the sows with the cameras on the back of them. So you can, this one needs attention. You would be able to place pigs on a farm of 6 houses, and the service person come by only whenever it's dictated by tags that you have on the pigs. Otherwise, the feed is already going to be monitored, the airflow is monitored, the water is monitored. Now, pig care is monitored, therefore eliminating the process of the people in and out of the barn, we that you're trying to eliminate disease and potential spread. With all that work together, in my imagination, possibility.
Anybody want to take that one? Where is it going?
So there is a 2-year research study that I did, and I went into the same barn every morning at the same time. And I've been doing the exact same thing every day. And then I walked in one morning and there was a cat. And so I think that we're never going to truly remove the human because we are living in the real world. We have dynamic situations. There's always entropy in something. Wow, there's always that one thing that doesn't fit the curve, right? And I think that all of these technologies are amazing and they can absolutely help our caretakers do the boring things, the easy things, but we still need those humans for those dynamic situations, those higher level decision making. And so I don't believe that we'll ever have a fully automated facility. I think we just have too many variables and just the nature of the beast personally.
Yeah, just to kind of say, just because they have you put a tag in there, doesn't mean it's gonna stay in there forever, right?
Correct.
And if you're tagging a whole barn, you'll probably get at least once a week, probably you'll probably have to do some retagging, but just because you put all this stuff in doesn't mean it's gonna stay in. You still have to do some looks into it, so. And a lot of it is just bringing everything together, which is quite hard, similar to what he was saying, where merging technologies across different companies, maybe getting a little bit tricky, right? It's a little bit tricky, so.
Okay, any final questions for our panel, or does anyone on the panel have any parting thoughts for the group? Okay, if not, let's thank our speakers.